Hey everyone, Eterna here. A lot of coaster enthusiasts do this thing where they make a video for their top coasters at the end of the year, and I decided I wanted a piece of that. Before we start, I want to run a few stats. As of making this video, I'm sitting at 349 different coasters across the world at around 65 different parks. I started off the year at 216 coasters and I'm now sitting at around 349 roller coasters. So I've been on over 130 new coasters this year alone that I haven't been on before. A lot of these coasters will be appearing in these rankings, and I also plan on making a video ranking the new coasters and parks I visited this year specifically. Of course, full disclosure, everything here is my opinion, none of it's fact, you're allowed to have your own opinions. And with that, let's get started. Also join my Discord server. Starting off our list at number 50 is Canada's oldest coaster at PNE Playland in Vancouver. Coaster may look like an average old Woody, but it is an absolute airtime machine that guarantees some of the most violent airtime you'll ever feel. With the amount of room between you and the restraint, you're guaranteed to be almost standing during every airtime moment on the ride. I also rode this before seatbelts were added, so the ride experience may be a bit different now, but I am going off of my experience. Next up on the list at number 49 is my lowest rated RMC, Goliath. Even though it's my lowest rated RMC, I don't think it's bad, and that shouldn't make it look bad. Each element has its place in the ride, and that stall is really solid. It's one of my top rides at the park, and it deserves its spot on this list, and at number 49. At number 48, we got Lost Gravity at Wallaby Holland. Lost Gravity was the first mock Big Dipper, and it sits at Wallaby Holland. This ride has a good drop, some really fun moments, and weird feeling inversions packed all into a nice little package. It's a really fun experience. At number 47 is Fury 3. I'm just kidding. This is just Fury at Bobbejaanland. This is Fury, but not the one you're thinking of. Fury at Bobbejaanland is a pretty solid ride that has a really cool gimmick. You can vote to go forwards or backwards. That's right, this ride does both. I only got a backwards ride because I was too busy rewriting Revolution. But that was more than enough for Fury to secure its spot at number 47. At number 46, we got the first B&M invert on this list, Osiris. Osiris was marketed to me as a mid-tier B&M invert, and on my first ride, I think that's what I got. After the ride warmed up a bit and I tried a different row, I got a way better experience that definitely bumped this up my ranking. This is a very solid B&M invert that ultimately packs in 5 inversions, and it also has a really nice looking queue and station. This is an easy one. At number 45, we got a Max Force. Max Force accelerates you from 0 to 78 miles per hour in under 2 seconds, and that's really all there is to say about this ride. At number 4, we got Montu, and I'm already waiting for the hate comments down below. I really don't think Montu is the best invert coaster, not even the best American invert coaster. But that doesn't mean I think it's the worst either. Montu overall is a great ride, and the trenches are really fun. Each inversion packs a serious punch, and the ride is unrelenting all the way to the end. This is really up there for me, especially in that amazing lineup of Busch Gardens Tampa. At number 43, we got Manta. Manta was my third flying coaster, with the first being Time Warp, and the second being Fly. Manta is a really solid flying coaster with a great signature pretzel loop element. The queue is cool and it kind of goes through an aquarium, and the interactive elements in the area like the water splashing when the train goes right above the water makes for a pretty cool spectacle for the guests. At number 42 we got Phoenix, the third B&M in a row. Phoenix is my favorite B&M wing coaster, and it's pretty forceful. 3 inversions, 5 Gs, and a beautiful area around this ride makes for a great experience. At number 41, we got Millennium Force, the first Giga coaster on the list. Millennium Force may be beyond force, but it definitely didn't pull the forces I was hoping for. I'm looking to get back on this ride again next year, so hopefully I'll have a higher opinion of the ride next time I get on it. I think ultimately I was just hoping for more forces instead of just speed, but in reality the ride is just more about speed. I think that now I know what to expect, I'll have a way better time on it. Breaking into the top 40 of this list is Takabisha from UGQ Highland. This ride is the older brother of TMNT Shellraiser at American Dream, and it comfortably sits as the second steepest coaster in the world with a drop angle of 121 degrees. Don't tell that to the park though, because they still think it's the steepest coaster in the world and they still advertise it as that. At number 39 we got Phoenix, the legendary coaster from Knoebels. This ride is known for winning the best wooden coaster golden ticket every year, even if it might not deserve it. But it's still an incredible ride with amazing airtime similar to Coaster at PNE Playland. At number 38, we got Red Force, the second Giga coaster on the list. This ride is pretty much top build dragster and King the Koth. It was shorter and used LSMs instead of hydraulics. I personally prefer King the Koth more than this ride, but this ride stands on its own really well, and it's a great addition to a park like Portaventura. Next up at number 37, we got Orion, the newest B&M Giga Coaster to open. Sitting at the back of Kings Island, Orion feels like B&M's attempt to do something different. And while everything might not land the way they wanted it to, the ride is still definitely enjoyable. Overall, I have this near the bottom of my Giga Coaster rankings, but it still lands at number 37 on this list. Also, don't ask an enthusiast if they think this is a Giga Coaster or a Hyper Coaster. At number 36, we got Great Bear. I know putting this above Montu is pretty much blasphemy to enthusiasts, but I really think Great Bear is one of the top inverts in the world. Every ride I've had on this coaster has been great, whether it be a ride at opening or right before close. This coaster has a unique drop, great inversions, and a nice scenic segment that glides above the water. At number 35 is King Dakar. You know I couldn't have a list like this without including the world's tallest coaster. King Dakar towers over the coaster world at 456 feet and was at one point the fastest coaster in the world, with a top speed of 128 miles an hour. This ride may be short, but it definitely packs a punch, and that front row ride is not something to be messed with. Another Giga Coaster on the list, Steel Dragon 2000, in my opinion is a very underrated coaster. The ride pulls some pretty solid airtime on the return trip, and it just feels like a larger Magnum XL200. This ride usually sits at the bottom of people's ranking for Giga Coasters, but for me it sits comfortably around the middle of the pack. At number 33 we got my only single rail coaster I've been on, Jersey Devil Coaster. I really don't get the hate for this coaster, as it feels like the perfect coaster for a lot of enthusiasts. It's whippy, has fun inversions, and pulls some nice G's too. This also ended up being my favorite coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure. At number 32 we got Fujiyama, another underrated coaster on my list. I really wasn't expecting much from this ride, but two legendary rain rides on it changed my mind, and brought it all the way up to number 32 in my rankings. If you're going to Fuji-Q Highland, do not sleep on this ride, as it very much deserves its spot in the park's legendary top 4. Number 31, we got Candymonium at Hershey Park. Believe it or not, on my first ride, I actually had this near Mako. After that, I don't know what happened, but this ride had some sort of fall off for me, and I've never had a ride on it as good as the first. Candymonium has a really solid spot in Hershey Park, and really rounds up the lineup, making it into one of the best in North America. At the end of the day, it's a better than average B&M Hyper with some good airtime. From one B&M Hyper to another, number 30 is Diamondback. Although I don't think Diamondback is just a better than average B&M Hyper. In fact, I think it's very much above average, and it sits at the top of the rankings of them for me. Diamondback has a good amount of airtime and a fun little splashdown. Today, Diamondback sits as one of the top coasters at Kings Island for me. At number 29, we have Baron 1898. Baron is known throughout the coaster community as that dive coaster with theming, and it's definitely that. The theming and setting of this ride is spectacular, all the way down to the elements that happen even before the ride, like the station, show scene, and queue. I will agree that this ride wouldn't be as high up on this list without the theming, but the layout is still great and packs a whole lot in a short ride. At number 28, we have Batman Gotham City Escape at Park Warner Madrid. I went into this ride with the expectation of it being a European Velocicoaster, and while it doesn't have the same intensity or the level of theming as Velocicoaster, it still very much has a great layout, theme, and queue. I do think that the ride would be better if it didn't basically stop you at the top of the top hat, but it looks great as you're walking into the park, and the ride still runs amazingly. At number 27, we got Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure. It's a long name, but it lives up to it. The whole ride is amazing, and it goes on for so long. The backwards section is a lot of fun, the ride has some cool surprises, and the motorbike seats also add a cool aspect to the experience. This is definitely an experience every enthusiast needs to do at some point. At number 26, we have Black Mamba. Black Mamba tops my B&M invert coaster rankings, and it definitely deserves it. This ride is completely unrelenting and forces you through some amazing theming and terrain. I still haven't been on some of the other top invert coasters like Nemesis and Pyrenees, but I hope they live up to the expectations that Black Mamba has set for me. For me, Black Mamba is the gold standard of not just B&M inverts, but a great themed coaster experience. If you love B&M inverts or themed coasters, you gotta get on Black Mamba. At number 25, we have Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. GCI just loves making these amazing wooden coasters, and don't let the hype fool you. Mystic Timbers is an absolute machine, and very deserving of being in my top 25. This ride just throws you around for the whole duration. In the same park as Mystic Timbers, at number 24 we have The Beast. While I didn't get one of the iconic Beast night rides, I still found Beast to be a very enjoyable trip through the woods in coaster form. It may not have the greatest airtime or pull insane forces, but it makes up for that in its environment. At number 23 we have Leviathan. Leviathan is the only ride from my home park to crack into my top 50, and it made it all the way to number 23. Leviathan takes you on an insane journey from start to finish, with a great drop and some solid airtime. This being at my home park definitely makes me a bit biased, I feel, but I've had plenty of amazing experiences on this ride. In 2019 you could easily say this ride was on the same level as Behemoth, but now times have changed and Leviathan stands nearly 75 spots above Behemoth in my rankings. For 22 we have Conda. Walibi Belgium's newest signature attraction makes it up to number 22 on the list. Conda is a pretty unique ride with its twisted drop giving vibes of Expedition G-Force to its one-of-a-kind non-inverting Cobra roll. I hope Intamin gets a chance to make more rides like this, and I look forward to seeing more of them. At number 21 we have another RMC, Untamed. While Untamed may be at the lower end of my RMC rankings, it's still an amazing ride deserving of number 21 on this list. When I got my rides on Untamed, it was running pretty slow, and I don't know if that's a normal thing or not, or if it was just because of the day that I went. The elements weren't hitting as hard as I'd hoped for, but the ride still had the usual RMC punch, which is how it landed up at number 21 on this list. Making its way into the top 20, we have Shambhala. Known for its legendary airtime moments, Shambhala lives up to the hype. Shambhala pulls insane amounts of airtime and it feels like it's never ending. But that's exactly what Shambhala is. Never ending airtime. A neat note is that Shambhala also has one of my favorite turnarounds on any coaster I've been on. And next up on the list at number 19 is Steel Curtain. Steel Curtain takes you upside down the most out of any coaster in North America, at a whopping 9 inversions. If you're lucky enough to get to Kennywood while it's actually operating and not closed, like it is half the time, then you are in for a treat. The inversions all feel different from each other, and because of that the ride does not even feel repetitive, even with a large amount of inversions. At number 18 we have Tonnerre de Zeus. Tonnerre de Zeus gave me one of my favorite experiences I've ever had on a ride. There's just something special about riding a wild wooden coaster backwards in the rain, especially when you don't even know what the layout is going to be. I've only done a few other coasters backwards and all of them have been great experiences, but Tonnerre de Zeus is above the rest. At number 17 we have Maverick from Cedar Point. Maverick is an unrelenting ride that feels like it's trying its hardest to throw you out of your seat. The laterals are great and the launches are phenomenal, and the entire experience is something that you can't find at many other parks. This is definitely something that every coaster enthusiast needs to ride, but seeing how it's at Cedar Point, I feel like most enthusiasts have already gotten on it. At number 16 we got Fly. Not every flying coaster needs to be an insane forceful monstrosity pulling 5+ Gs in a pretzel loop. Fly proves that all you need is a great layout and theming to pull it off. But I think calling the theming just great is a bit of an understatement. Fly has some of the best theming in the world, and probably the best I've ever seen. And the ride even has an entire area all to itself. Fly isn't just a ride, it's an experience. At number 15 we have Karnan. There isn't much I could say about this ride without spoiling some of the really cool stuff it does, but what I can say is that it has an amazing soundtrack and the build up to the ride itself through the queue line is amazing. Much like the ride, the queue also has some cool surprises though I don't know how much I could talk about, but just know that when you're going on this ride, you're gonna have a great time. Hitting number 14 on the list is Phantom's Revenge. Phantom's Revenge has some really insane ejector airtime, and it feels like it's really trying to rip you out of the ride. The location of this ride adds a lot to it, as the second drop being the main drop of the ride is a cool unique factor that's almost specific to Phantom's Revenge. The new color scheme is also beautiful. At number 13 we have Mako, and much like Shambhala, Mako commonly sits at the top of people's B&M rankings. This ride is pure airtime, and it feels like you never go back down into your seat. The layout may be repetitive, but pretty much every other B&M hyper is too, and the airtime always makes it worth it. At number 12 we have one of the final RMCs on the list, Twisted Timbers. Twisted Timbers sits at the back of King's Dominion and is my top coaster during my visit, because half of the park was closed and I couldn't get on I-305. This ride condenses all the intensity of an RMC into a shorter package, and it really delivers. Strong airtime and fun inversions is the signature of Twisted Timbers. Twisted Timbers also features a barrel roll drop, which is a really cool addition not found on many coasters. I know I'm about to get crucified for this, but Fury 325 isn't even in my top 10. While it's an incredible coaster, I only got one ride on it, and it wasn't really the best, as it was a cold night in March in row 2. Fury 325 is a legendary coaster, with some iconic elements such as the treble clef, and it's commonly in the running for best Giga Coaster alongside Intimidator 305. I guess the ride would end up going up higher in my rankings when I get another chance to ride it in better conditions, but for now it sits right aside of my top 10 at number 11. And now we're finally hitting the big ones. Starting off the top 10 is Totatus from Parc Astérix. Recently, Intimate has made some greats, and Totatus is definitely one of them. A lot of people see Totatus as the European equivalent to Pantheon, but as far as I know, the debate of Totatus being better is still up in the air. I missed my chance to get on Pantheon as it was still closed during my visit to Busch Gardens Williamsburg. So this is my only experience with this new series of Intamin launch coasters. Totatus has a great combination of elements, and the area with the launches before the top hat has some pretty good airtime. After the top hat is a barrage of great elements, and the ride never lets go until the brake run. If Pantheon is anything like Totatus, then I can't wait to get a ride on it. At number 9 we have Sky Rush. Sky Rush is one of those rides you'll either love or hate, and fortunately, I landed on the love side. Sky Rush is very easily one of my favorite rides in the world. It is an unrelenting, never-ending ride that just keeps on throwing you around and around, and it really makes you feel like it's trying to just take you out of your seat. It features one of my favorite drops on any coaster, and it has some amazing ejector airtime too. Some people say the restraints hurt, but I don't have any problems with them, so maybe that contributed to my enjoyment of the ride. Jumping in at number 8, we have Velocicoaster from Islands of Adventure. Earlier we went over European Velocicoaster with Gotham City Escape, but now we got the real Velocicoaster. One of the best coasters in Florida, Velocicoaster works because it's a combination of not just an amazing layout, but also incredible theming. They work together to make Velocicoaster one of the best rides in the world, much like the next coaster on this list. And that next coaster on the list is number 7, Terran. Terran takes what Velocicoaster does, but exchanges the god tier layout for even better theming. Terran takes you on a wonderful trip through the entire Klugheim area, with an amazing soundtrack and a very fun layout. The layout may not have an insane top hat or crazy inversions, but it makes up for it by being a purely fun experience. Now just a few places ago we had a Jurassic Park coaster, and here's another one. Number 6 is Flying Dinosaur at Universal Studios Osaka. When I think of forceful coaster experiences, I think of Flying Dinosaur at USJ. This ride pulls no punches and throws you into several elements, leaving you on your back and basically pulling you through the equivalent of 2 separate pretzel loops. Flying Dinosaur was one of my most anticipated coasters of my Japan trip this year, and the 4 rides I got on this during my day at USJ were more than enough to make me put this ride into my top 10. The only B&M flyer I could think of that could possibly maybe top this is Starry Skyripper, but there's probably the chance I never end up getting on it. This incredible world-class ride is just number 6, and we still have 5 more to go. Starting off the top 5 is Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa. For me, Iron Gwazi is pretty close to being the perfect coaster. It's fast, forceful, has crazy inversions, and it's an overall great experience. If it was any longer, it would definitely be higher up on my list and maybe even top Steel Vengeance. Iron Gwazi is the kind of ride that picks you up and never lets go, throwing you towards a barrage of elements back to back, starting with an amazing drop, and it just gets better and better with each element. What really holds this ride back for me, as I said, is the length. I just don't feel right about potentially putting this over a ride like Steel Vengeance because of that. But continuing our list at number 4 is Hakuge at Nagashima Spa Land. Okay, I know I was just talking about how ride length was holding back Iron Gwazi, but Hakuge is a completely different beast. I had a lot of trouble deciding whether or not I should put this above or below Steel Vengeance, and in my mind it's about on the same level. Hakuge feels like a small scale RMC hybrid like Twisted Timbers, but brought up to a larger scale, but still keeping that same intensity of the smaller RMC hybrids. Every bit of airtime is intense, each element feels like it's trying to kill you, and the drop is insane in the back row. The structure for Hakuge is completely menacing as well. When you think of top tier RMCs, Hakuge is always one you should have in mind. Starting off the top 3 is Ride to Happiness, the greatest ride in Europe. When people talk about out of control ride experiences, this one is basically always up at the top, I feel. Ride to Happiness is a mock extreme spinner that just picks you up and never lets go. And I know I've said that a lot so far during this list, but this one is for real. During my day at Plopsaland, I got 45 rides on this. And I think it's safe to say that I love this ride a bit too much. We're nearing the ending of the list, and now we're at number 2, Steel Vengeance. I feel like a lot of people were expecting me to put this at number 1, especially with how much I've been talking about it during this list. But here it is at a firm number 2. Steel Vengeance needs no introduction, but in case if it does, here you go. The most airtime out of any coaster in the world, 4 incredible inversions, and an insanely long runtime that makes most coasters look short by comparison. Most people who have been on Steel Vengeance have this ride as their number 1, and it also stayed as my number 1 until this year. That's because next is number 1, Asian Nika. Finally at number 1 we have Asian Nika, my favorite coaster and the ride I really truly believe is the greatest coaster in the world. What isn't there to say about Asian Nika? There's no more out of control coaster experience than this insane monstrosity of a coaster. Nothing I've ever been on even comes close, not even Ride to Happiness. The intensity is out of control and the rotation adds a whole new element to the layout. And the location is also wonderful, set right beside Mount Fuji. Going into this ride I had insanely high expectations, and I was really thinking that I was setting them way too high. But this ride still smashed right through them. I typically don't get scared on rides, but riding this for the first time actually had me a bit scared. I truly believe that this is the best coaster in the world and that there's a good chance nothing tops this for me in the foreseeable future. Who knows, maybe Falcon's Flight will give it a run for its money. So there you have it, my top 50 coasters. I plan on making this a yearly tradition, so don't forget to check back next year for the updated list. I'm going on quite a few things next year, so we'll see how that list changes. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and maybe leave a like and a comment to help this video out in the algorithm. Next year, as I said, I have a few trips planned, so I'm expecting the top 50 to change quite a bit, so I'm pretty interested in how this will change. I'm also thinking of maybe doing a top 100 instead of just a top 50 next year. As always, thanks for watching, and have a good one. Peace.